Just look at this man for a few seconds. He's in his late 20s, sitting alone in his room, eating pizza. There's a slight belly starting to show. The TV is on, the curtains are closed. Seems like he just doesn't want to leave his room at all. And from the outside, it's very easy to label him a loser, a failure, another member of a lost generation. But have you ever stopped to ask yourself something deeper? What if there are bigger forces at play? What if this isn't just laziness, but a reaction? What if this new generation of adults is facing pressures so fundamentally different that walking away from society feels easier than participating in it? Writers, sociologists, and thinkers have been studying this shift for years. And today, I'm going to break down 4 major reasons why so many young adults feel disconnected from the current system, and why some of them don't just want to fix society. They want to build a completely new one. And in that imagined society, they believe they'd finally have a place, a purpose, a chance. So let's get into it. There was a time when a career path lasted a lifetime, when family ties were stable, when people believed they could truly put roots down in their jobs, in their neighborhoods, in their communities, and expect those things to endure. Just a generation ago, that kind of stability felt normal. Sociologist Zygmunt Bauman calls that era solid modernity, a time of factories, stable families, and institutions that were built to last. Life had structure. It had weight. It had continuity. But in our era, those old certainties have melted away. As one commentator describes it, the ground, once seemingly fixed, began to melt away. We now live in what Bauman calls a world of liquid life, where everything flows and nothing stays still. Solid structures have given way to constant change. Today, the gig economy perfectly symbolizes this shift. Jobs are temporary. Contracts are short-term. Stability is rare. People are forced to treat work, and often relationships, as flexible, disposable projects. We all recognize this reality. It's common to see friends renting apartment after apartment instead of owning a home. To watch someone move from city to city chasing the next opportunity. Long-term plans feel almost unrealistic. And it's not just physical things we rent anymore. We rent our entertainment. We rent our attention. In some ways, we rent our identities. Friendships often live inside chat apps. Communities exist as online groups that you can join and leave with a click. Even our personal histories can disappear with a swipe. Algorithms on social media don't love you. They simply follow the next click. Everything is presented as customizable and temporary. As Bauman observed, our job is contingent, our relationships fleeting, our identity constantly up for grabs. When nothing feels permanent, how can we feel grounded? It's no surprise that many people feel chronically uprooted. When everything changes, there's no incentive to commit. Why invest deeply in schools, churches, neighborhoods, or even friendships if they might dissolve tomorrow? Over time, we begin to detach. We start seeing ourselves not as permanent members of society, but as temporary visitors in a world that's always shifting. And this erosion of permanence takes a serious psychological toll. Without stable reference points, people often develop what philosophers call existential dissatisfaction. Arthur Schopenhauer argued that life driven by endless craving becomes inherently painful. An endless cycle of desires and suffering, where brief satisfaction is quickly replaced by new dissatisfaction. In a world of liquid change, Schopenhauer's pessimism feels surprisingly accurate. Every job might vanish, every relationship might fade, every accomplishment feels provisional. This instability breeds anxiety. It creates a quiet sense of absurdity. As Albert Camus wrote, sometimes we awaken to the disturbing feeling that life is fundamentally absurd, that ultimately nothing we do really signifies anything grand or important. When change repeatedly wipes the slate clean, our experiences start to feel weightless. Meaning becomes harder to hold on to. We begin to live like Sisyphus, building projects, chasing purpose, trying to create something lasting, only to watch it roll away with the next wave of change. Psychologically, this constant rootlessness weakens loyalty to institutions. We are nomads of cities, temporary squads in online games, playlists of shifting media identities. And this feeling, this deep sense that we are only passing through, becomes one of the strongest forces behind the desire to build something entirely new. There was a time when people could confidently say, "I own this house. I built that business. I chose this profession." Ownership wasn't just financial, it was psychological. It anchored life. Your home held your memories. A family farm passed from father to child. A career gave you a title, a role, a clear place in society. Ownership meant you had a stake in the world. But today, for many younger adults, that ideal feels almost unreachable. We rent our homes instead of owning them. We subscribe monthly for the tools and entertainment we use. We log into digital worlds where even our identities exist on borrowed platforms. We live in a time where you dedicate years to a career but know the profits belong to shareholders. When you pour effort into building content online but realize the platform and its algorithm controls your reach. When your recognition, income, or visibility depends on systems you don't own, you begin to feel that your labor isn't truly yours. Your work no longer feels like an extension of you. It feels leased. Your identity begins to slip. Friedrich Nietzsche saw a related phenomenon, though he described it in moral terms. He spoke of slave morality, a mindset that arises among those who lack power or status. When people feel powerless, they sometimes turn weakness into a virtue. They moralize their lack of control. In today's context, many young adults feel structurally locked out of property ownership, locked out of high office, locked out of traditional roots of influence and stability. The frustration of wanting basic markers of adulthood, a home, a secure career, a place in society, and being unable to claim them can easily turn into bitterness. Ownership, in Nietzsche's sense, grants authority. It allows you to judge, to shape, to influence. Without property, without title, without stake, many feel they own nothing in the current system. And if you own nothing, do you really belong? As someone wrote, if you own nothing, you belong to nothing. Ownership is deeply tied to identity. My house is my security. My business is my legacy. My creative work is my voice. Strip those away, and people start to feel like perennials planted in someone else's garden, growing, but never rooted. This is psychologically dangerous ground. Some people respond by trying to reform the system, experimenting with new economic models, digital collectivism, alternative ownership structures. Others, however, drift toward a darker conclusion. If you can't gain agency within the system, the temptation grows. Break it apart and claim something new. This helps explain why ownership of property, of labor, even of bodies, has become such a charged and radical issue. The desire for agency doesn't disappear, it intensifies. And in a world where even your identity can feel rented, where social media profiles can be taken, manipulated, or erased, the craving for something genuinely yours becomes overwhelming. When material agency vanishes, alienation deepens. And when alienation deepens, the desire for an entirely new framework of ownership and belonging grows stronger. Or at the very least, the rage to destroy the one that excludes you. This isn't about political parties. It's not a left versus right complaint. It's structural. Many young people today feel completely shut out of real power. Look around and you'll notice the gap. Politicians are often decades older than the people voting for them. Decision makers seem disconnected from the daily realities of younger generations. Rising rents, unstable careers, digital life, climate anxiety. Massive corporations operate like untouchable giants. National economies run on rules written by elites. Even social media, a space that supposedly belongs to the people, is ultimately governed by invisible, inscrutable algorithms. So a question naturally arises. Where is my voice? When your city, your country, and even your digital spaces are run by people far removed from your lived experience, how can your vote or your opinion truly matter? This disconnect breeds something deep, a sense of irrelevance, and eventually, outrage. Here, Nietzsche's insights about powerlessness feel disturbingly relevant. He warned that when people feel powerless, they often respond by moralizing their weakness. He called this resentment a simmering resentment that turns into moral hostility toward the powerful. It's not that people are naturally destructive, it's that when they're excluded from meaningful participation, frustration becomes moralized. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche's prophet calls for the creation of new values when old ones have decayed. And what happens if I cannot meaningfully participate in today's power structures? The only space left is the mind. If the halls of power are closed to me, I might as well imagine building a new palace, or better yet, a new society entirely. And modern media intensifies this tension. Many young people turn to online activism, posting, protesting, raising awareness, hoping that virality might translate into real change. But when posts are shadow banned, monetized, buried, or absorbed into corporate platforms, the effort can feel hollow, like performing rebellion inside a machine that profits from it. It starts to resemble a puppet show. Ironically, this mirrors classic dystopian literature. Think of Winston Smith in 1984, trapped in a system where he cannot access the truth or influence Big Brother. Or the citizens in Brave New World, pacified and disconnected from meaningful political choice. In those stories, the characters are locked out of power. In our reality, many feel something similar, not under totalitarian rule, but under systems so distant and complex that participation feels symbolic at best, and so the mind drifts towards something radical. If I cannot live on the terms imposed on me, what if I create my own terms? Modern life has slowly eroded the great anchors of identity that once gave people stability and meaning. Today, nationalism is fading in many places where borders feel porous, and cultural blending is the norm. Family structures have transformed, more single-person households, blended families, and people choosing not to have children at all. In just a few generations, inherited roles have dissolved. Where your grandparents might have become priests, farmers, or caretakers by birthright, today, young adults are told, create yourself, be whoever you want to be, construct your own identity. It sounds freeing, but it's also terrifying. Nietzsche famously declared that God is dead. He didn't mean a literal deity had died. He meant that the moral and spiritual framework that Western civilization depended on had collapsed. The scaffolding of inherited meaning, divine purpose, eternal afterlife, fixed moral order had been pulled away. And when that scaffolding disappears, something unsettling happens. A void opens. For some, that void leads to apathy. For others, despair. Fyodor Dostoevsky imagined underground men suffocating in nihilism. Albert Camus wrote about how confronting life's absurdity could push someone toward suicide. Leo Tolstoy offers perhaps one of the most haunting personal reflections on this state. In his own diary, he described life as a cruel fraud, asking, "Is there any meaning in my life that the inevitable death awaiting me does not destroy?" He wrote about waking up to the realization that after death, nothing will remain but stench and worms. Tolstoy admitted this understanding nearly broke him. When everything ends, when death erases all achievements, relationships, and memories, what feels worth doing? When old certainties vanish, identity begins to crumble. If I'm not anchored by religion, not defined by family lineage, not secured by nation, not permanently rooted in career, then who am I? A username, a job title, a passport? In that darkness, the hunger for meaning intensifies. And this is where something powerful happens. Without a given foundation, constructing purpose becomes urgent, almost sacred. Building a new society suddenly feels like more than politics. It feels like salvation. Revolution becomes a substitute for faith. In the end, building a new society becomes a substitute religion, filling the void left by nihilism, restoring direction to lives that feel unmoored.